Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Michael Fillios, founder and CEO of IT Ally and a CDO editorial board member. And we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Ali Khan, Chief Data Officer at Experian Consumer Services. Ali, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm also intrigued at your work that you did at Helm. And, this was a unique situation, basically addressing and creating, advocates for understanding human civic behavior, interventions that drive impact and scale towards more of a participatory democracy. So there's quite a bit there that takes this, beyond the standard definition of a CDO. How did you achieve this? How did you pursue this with your other leaders in terms of achieving this bold mission?
Yeah, Helm's an incredible place, and I'm really grateful to have been, part of it. As you mentioned, the mission of Helm is to build a more participatory democracy, and that's a deep question, right? Like, how do you do that, right? And a lot of the analysis was really around, what are the forms of inequality that exist, right? In society, because not having access to the political process is a form of inequality, right? And so this is a research-driven company. There are, real experts in, human decision-making, the political process, how power flows, how decisions are made. And so really this is around sort of understanding, how people make decisions and how to change those decisions. And so a lot of the work was really just sort of learning, from, of course, elections, right? But also just civic engagement in general, right? And just, what can we sort of learn from that? How can we bring together, all of the data about someone's interactions, whether it's, direct civic participation or whether it's, community sort of organizing or, taking part in that. And what does that tell us about the environment that we can, move things towards, positive change? So, it's a research-driven company, a data-driven company. And ultimately, it was the mission that sort of was the fuel for everything. About that though, the one thing that really I really sort of thought about a lot while I was there was those divisions of inequality, right? Especially because it was COVID, and I think all of us were becoming increasingly aware that not having access or to the political process is just one form of inequality, right? So there's financial inequality, there's healthcare access inequality. That was also very obvious sort of during COVID. Access to quality housing or education and all of those. And so when we sort of thought about that, the one thing that I was thinking about in particular was financial inequality. I have 4 kids, and I have two older boys and 2 younger girls. And so the older boys, I always tell them that money doesn't guarantee happiness, but it definitely can eliminate sort of several sources of misery, right? Mm-hmm. And so financial inclusion, it isn't the be all and end all of equality, but it goes a long way to being there. And so when I spoke to Experian, our conversations were mostly about that, mostly about the mission of ECS to create financial power for all. How do you sort of open the doors for people who haven't had access to credit before? How do you help people eliminate debt and build savings and so on? And so in some ways, it was a sort of a continuation of part of that mission.
That's great. And I definitely, agree with you, having 3 kids as well, on the equality and teaching them about these things to make their lives hopefully less stressful over time. So, with your background and how you've sort of been shaped, whether it be at your current role at Experian or just in general, has there been someone in your life that's played a role to help you succeed as a mentor, that you continuously lean on, and what can you share about that relationship?
Yeah, a really formative period of my career was at IBM. This was early in my career, and it was just a great, as a young engineer, it was a great place to work. And I know IBM's had sort of their ups and downs, right, and they've changed a lot. But there are a few things that I experienced there that I really have sort of stayed with me, throughout my career. One is that they did knowledge management really, really well. So I was in the consulting division, and so that is all about knowledge management and sharing knowledge, and that was just part of the DNA of the company. It was also remote, right? It was remote friendly before that was really a thing. It was a matrix organization, so all these things that are sort of the norm now. They were sort of ahead of the curve on. But maybe the most powerful thing was mentoring. There was an extremely strong mentoring culture there, and so I had real mentors there, for the first time in my career, and it really sort of changed the way that I thought about the profession, right? So I realized that this wasn't just something that was a result of sort of academic training and things like that. It was really a profession in the sense of being a mentor and a mentee, being an apprentice, right, and then a journeyman, and then sort of moving towards mastery. And there were a lot of people who were experts, at IBM, and so that's something that stayed with me. I benefited a lot from that. In particular, I received a lot of, there were a couple of people, who are very senior architects there, and really sort of, I've spent quite a lot of my sort of career doing architecture, and really sort of forced me to, think in new ways, right? So one of the things that I like to do with my team that I learned back then was, I like to ask my teams, okay, what if today was our first day? Well, what if we just hired? So forget about all this legacy and all this infrastructure. How would we do it today? And it's sort of a blue sky exercise, but I literally just did this the other day, right? And it really forces us to question some of our assumptions. It forces us to go back to first principles. It forces us to confront the sort of sunk cost fallacy, and all of that I got from mentors at IBM. And so mentoring is something that I've benefited from, and so that I wanted to do. I was formerly a mentor at Scholastic. At Verizon, I was a mentor for 7 female leaders as part of a program organized by Women of the World. Wow, I was a squad leader there, so that was a really good experience. And so here at Experian now, I see a great sort of need for mentoring, given that we are agile, right? We are, I've seen, even in my short time here so far, products launch from, from just an idea to the market, right? So things like Experian Boost, right, which raises people's credit points, and I think it's contributed 90 million points, right? Since it was launched for tens of millions of people. Since I've been here, Go, which gives access to underserved communities, mostly people who have sort of no credit history or no access to credit at all. So it's very much a startup-like environment, and in those kinds of environments, you have to think on your feet. You have to move quickly. You have to respond to the business. And so I think, mentoring has a great role to play in an environment like that.
Yeah, you also need air coverage, right? Because in that environment, sometimes things don't always go as planned. So do you feel like you got the support of the leadership team to help you, execute on this vision and be, patient, although agile, all those things that you described, right, require some good air coverage and leadership support at the top. So perhaps this is a good segue into the discussion around governance, because, in discussing data, it often very quickly comes to who owns the data and how we want to manage the data and govern the data to achieve the outcomes that we want. So how would you characterize where Experian is on its governance journey, and what do you see as some of your challenges in that regard here?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think part of the challenge and opportunity of Experian is that it's highly federated, right? And so we have distinct units who each individually have incredibly rich and well curated data sets, right? The opportunity now is to combine those, and increasingly that's happening, right? To add additional value for our consumers. So my focus within Experian Consumer Services is obviously data that is relevant and interesting and useful to the consumer. And so the challenges are not unique, right? Cataloging is incredibly important. That is the starting point really for any data governance effort. What do I have? And what does it look like, right? What state is it in? And so that's a huge focus, right? And really having that and extending that across the company, is something that it's a key concern for myself and for other data leaders. Then sort of understanding the value of these data sets, right? And really sort of understanding them as assets, right? I think that's key as well. And then you mentioned at the beginning this idea of ownership. I don't think Experian has this problem, right? There's an understanding that the data is not something that just sort of IT is or technology is thinking about. The real owners of this data are in the first instance really the customer, right? And so this idea of consumer permission data, that customers will explicitly give you permission for certain types of data is very critical. And then the fact that within the business there are stewards, right, who actually sort of will curate that data and define data quality rules and expectations around that data. So fairly, standard challenges, but given that we are a data company, it's something that really is at the very top of our considerations.
Very well said. Well, listen, Ali, thank you very much. I truly enjoyed the conversation, and I think others will as well. And I very much appreciate your time today. And if you want to learn more about CDO Magazine or view other interviews, please visit cdomagazine.tech. Thank you very much again. Be safe and be well, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.